Chuck takes a deep, methodical breath as she stands before her destination. Well, hopefully it was the destination. She has a rather unique retrieval task. Asking around the station while bearing through many odd looks of confusion and horror, this was the place all pointed her to. A bar. A Deathworlder bar. Looking up at the hard light sign, it reads, The Silverback. Chuck looks up that term in her net lens, only to panic from the monstrous images of horrible creatures of muscle and mortal death. Quickly resetting her lens with her eyes sealed shut, she shakes her head. A Terran animal, of course, the shaking Callie mutters as she attempts to center herself. She jumps as the entrance door slides open, giving way to a pack of Deathworlders barking in their loud, teeth-baring laughter. Thank the stars above they paid her no mind. Wait, no. That's part of the whole purpose of being here. Chuck steps to follow the pack, only to witness one spew their stomach bile to the amusement of their packmates. Maybe not those particular ones, Chuck affirms, looking back at the front door. With little time to make any further considerations, she dashes in as the door slides closed behind her. Instantly, Chuck is overwhelmed by sensory overload. Aggressive Terran music plays loudly, only overtaken by their many barks and inebriated discourse. The aroma is heavily bitter and thick, as if drenched in oil. However, the most concerning intake is sight. So many Terrans. Certainly more than Chuck has personally seen concentrated in one place. Nearly all of them are consuming various types of toxic ethanol, as if it's the purest form of water. Chuck wasn't sure which aspect was worse, that this species can drink it as if it wasn't poison, or that this species drew pleasure from being poisoned. She stiffens when her instincts sense the gaze of a predator on her. No, several predators. I'm trespassing in their territory. Of course they will be watching me. I must be an odd sight here, Chuck internally reasons, as she forces one hoof in front of another. She wanders, giving as much berth between herself and the growingly curious Deathworlders around her, searching around in hopes to find a packless, solitary Terran, for they are the most likely to accept the proposition she brings. Unfortunately, the only Terran fitting those parameters is the one dispensing the poison to his fellows. With her focus on that individual, she failed to stop herself from bumping into another that her other numbed senses failed to warn her of. Prancing a few feet back in panic, she looks up to the hulking Terran, staring her down with his forward-facing predatory eyes. The Terran stood 3 heads taller than the poor Callie, a head taller than most of the fellow Terrans around the scene. Oh, my greatest apologies, Terran, she chirps in Galactic Standard. The male raises one of the fur tufts above his left eye, amused. You must be tragically lost, he responds with a deep chuckle. No, I'm actually... Chuck tries to explain, but the sudden appearance of 2 more similarly imposing Terrans on either side of her causes fear to silence any more of the Callie's words. Poor little thing. She full of bigger dunderheads than I thought, the Terran on the left says with unsettling glee. A Terran paw clasps down on Chuck's upper shoulders from behind. Her instinctual muscles stiffen to mimic a statue, as the hunters literally box her in. You have no fucking idea, the paw's owner declares. The initial behemoth Terran looks up past Chuck, baring his teeth, and crosses his arms. This one with you? He asks, rather disappointed. Yeah, I've got business with his clan. I told this dumb fuck to meet me outside, but I guess I wasn't clear enough for it, the hidden Terran's voice confirms. The large male nods, but his gaze falls back onto Chuck's with malice. Don't suppose this business of yours is for sale? He asks with a smirk. The voice takes an uncomfortably drawn-out moment to reply to the offer. Shit, man. Tempting. But this business is more of a personal nature. Excuse me. The paw pulls and easily drags the frozen Callie away from the 3 threatening Deathworlders. Just remember to stay in your lane, the large male calls out, before turning away. Feeling the stiffness begin to wane, Chuck begins breathing in quickly. I'm afraid you're mistaken. You must be referring to a different Callie. I'm here to... She tries to explain, as the Terran firmly leads her back out of the bar and into the side alleyway. The brief comfort of leaving that place of predators is soon replaced by being alone with one. Do you have a goddamn death wish? The Terran scolds, as she tosses the Callie, perhaps a little too roughly, in the alley, or taking up the only exit to block the lane view. A little shaken, Chuck scratches at the sides of her head with her lower, lesser arms. Oh, of course not. In fact, I'm here because I have an exceptionally firm stance on living. Chuck counters, both fearful and annoyed. She observes this new Terran cross their only pair of arms and lean up against the wall. A female, as far as Chuck can tell. One with frizzled, reddish-brown head fur, and slightly solar-damaged skin causing it to be altered from its natural tone in more exposed areas. Her emerald eyes gleaming in utter, bemused confusion. I know it doesn't help my people's reputation, but you just had to literally run into the worst gangs on this side of Orion. They are bad news for folks like you, understand? The Terran breaks her line of sight to check behind her. I see. You seem to be rather acquainted. Chuck points out, uneasily taking a step back. Yeah, you could say that. Although our lines of work are at odds, we stew in the same shit to get it done. The Terran's shoulders relax. Looks like they lost interest in you. Just keep your head down for the next few cycles. I don't expect too much trouble for you. They don't have the attention spans to care for that long. The reality of the situation sinks in for Jack. Oh, you saved me, protected me. That's perfect. She chirps, now excited to have this Deathworlder before her. Yeah, you're welcome, the Terran says, uncertain if appreciation was a Callie trait or not. Oh, yes, I thank you, Terran. By chance, are you without a pack? Jack inquires, getting close to the Terran, who rolls their eyes at the term. No, pack? No, I'm working independently. Comes with a job, she responds, annoyed. Seeing the discomfort of the Terran, guilt perks up in Jack. She lowers herself slightly in apology. I'm sorry. That must have been very rude of me to ask a Terran such a thing. My eagerness superseded my wits. I have specific criteria and you are a great match so far. I'm not offended, I just... Wait, what? Criteria? What do you want about? The Terran narrows her gaze upon the Callie in suspicion. Indeed. I have the important task of recruiting a Deathworlder for the ship I'm serving on. After my preliminary research, I determined a Terran would be best suited. By a margin of 7% at that. Are you telling me you, a lone Callie, strolled into a seedy Terran bar on some backwater station filled with drunks, gang members, lowlifes and petty criminals, to hire them? Yes, though I only intend to recruit a single individual, of course, Chuck affirms plainly. Both of the Terran's eye-hair tufts lift up, and concentrated air escapes her narrowing mouth. Shit. Can't help but respect that. Still stupid, but damn. Regardless of the insult, having the respect of this Deathworlder is certainly encouraging. I would greatly appreciate the opportunity to interview you for the position, Chuck proclaims, clapping her lower arm phalanges together. Sorry, but that wouldn't be a good idea. I'm not on the best of terms with most of the major enterprises and some government bodies. Besides, I'm not interested in being gawked at and dealing with half the other species kneeling over from just seeing me turn a corner. The Terran peeks around to see the front door of the bar. Oh, no, I must clarify. The ship I serve on is a rather small business venture, completely independent as well. We currently only have a crew of 2, myself and Captain Chucknug. The Terran female can't help but look at the Callie in bewilderment. I'm taking a wild guess your captain isn't a Deathworlder. Correct, he's a Trumpole, Chuck confirms. What of the goddamn frog snakes? Holy shit, are you insane? The Terran grabs Chuck by the scruff and brings her up nose to nose, which recalls the earlier freezing of fear. I assure you the captain is a kind soul. Most Trumpoles are exceptionally decent as well, Chuck defends, unsure of the vitrolic distrust this Terran has for one of the most mundane species the universe has to offer. What? No, listen. If you go around announcing that you have a ship with no sizable crew defending it in a place like this, you are literally advertising the free ship for the pickings. I swear, what made you think a station of low-life Deathworlders would be a smart place to come helplessly broadcast yourselves? Chuck's large red eyes blink slowly, and her breaths chuff on the border of crying. We didn't have much choice. We need help. From someone like you, she says in a wavering manner. The Terran inwardly sighs and wrestles with her thoughts. Fuck. What's the job? I'm not saying yes, you gotta convince me, she says, biting back instant regret. Chuck sniffs in surprise. 30,000 annual credit wage guaranteed, plus bonuses and full medical coverage. Chuck quickly chose first and foremost. Believe it or not, money isn't my biggest concern right now. What is the job? The Terran enforces. Officially, Chief of Security. And unofficially? I'm not some mindless bruiser who's going to crack heads just because you told me to, the Terran warns. Oh, perfect. Your duty would be to simply ensure the safety of the ship and crew, by whatever means you deem necessary, Chuck assures. Actually not finding anything particularly disagreeable, the Terran bites her cheek, mulling it over. I have conditions, she says in more of a breath than voice. Chuck begins to clap her lower arms again in enthusiasm. Oh, yes, of course. We are happy to accommodate the needs of a Deathworlder. That is the first condition. My name is Simone. Whenever possible, especially when addressing me directly, please don't call me a Deathworlder, Simone states, with the most serious face and tone she can express. Oh, I wasn't aware of that term being an offence. Chuck earnestly apologizes. Well, it's not. At least to most Terrans you'll meet. It's a personal thing. I see. Consider it done. It's nice to meet you, Simone. I'm Chakalanontas, but simply Chak is perfectly fine as well. Any more terms? Yes, I require daily caffeine stims, preferably coffee, but I'll take what I can get. I'll need to acquire a permit, but with a Terran crew member, that shouldn't be an issue. Good. How about alcohol? Simone presses. Oh, that would be much more difficult, as only human vessels can easily get a permit, but I'm sure any disciplinary action taken against you for ethanol possession after your shore leaves can be overlooked, as long as it doesn't interfere with your work, of course. Chuck stammers. Good enough. The two stare at each other, giving their respective awaiting expressions. So, anything else? Chuck finally chirps. No, that pretty much covers it. Chuck tilts her head, trying to find humour in the Terran's face, but seeing none. Really? No conditions regarding living quarters, wage negotiations, or dietary requirements? Simone shrugs. I'm used to cramped places, the wage sounds fair, and we already discussed caffeine stims. What do you eat? Chuck clarifies. Ah, right, I am picky. As long as it's clear for human consumption, I'm good. Simone dismisses. I see. Very good. Perfect. So, are we in agreement? Do you accept the position? Simone sighs again. This is not what she expected today. Cutting ties with long-for connections and jobs was not appealing in the least. However, they were all for the ultimate goal of getting off this station anyway. Why not cut to the finishing line? Damn the consequences. You know what? I'll have to see the ship first, but consider me on board. Boss? Simone bares her teeth, holding the carrier at arm's length. Oh, that's wonderful. Perfect. The title is unnecessary since we'll be crewmates more than anything. As Chief of Security, mind doing me a small favour? Sure. I would appreciate feeling the ground under my hooves again. Simone looks down, seeing that she had unwittingly lifted the poor Kelly a foot off the ground. Intrigued, she lets go with one hand and chuckles. Holy shit, you guys are light. If you say so. Now can you... Right, sorry. Simone gently lowers her new crewmate. Where's your ship docked? Chuck tilts her head again. Do you not have things together? Possessions? Alcohol? With a smirk, Simone unzips her worn animal skin jacket and opens it up, showing pockets and pouches galore. Flasks, credit chips, knives, rations, tightly rolled articles of clothing, bones, mysterious liquids and substances all stored away. You can keep everything you own on you in a place like this. Just common sense. Simone winks before zipping back up. It's then Chuck finally notices the sidearm strapped to the hip. A plasma handgun of some sort. A rare thing to see outside military organizations. Not necessarily illegal to possess one. However, the means of acquiring it is often dubious at best. I've heard of Terran spontaneity, but you surprised me. Not that I'm grateful for such a quick and amicable agreement, but I hope you're not sacrificing too much of your life here. Chuck admits, with a faint thought of suspicion, regarding how easy this exchange had been. Simone barks a laugh, planting her hands on her hips. Have you seen this place? It's a shithole even by my standards, and that's saying a lot. No shortage of work, sure, but it's all fast and loose kind of work. And most of it isn't what I call pleasant. In fact, I was just kind of in the middle of something before spotting you, and if I can use this opportunity to jump ship to avoid it... Fuck, yeah, let's do this. Oh, in that case, follow me if you would. Our ship is docked in Bay S117. Chuck chirps, clasping all her appendages together. Simone nods, stepping aside to finally allow the Callie to pass. As one tails closely behind the other through the station, the duo both begin to grow uneasy. Chuck's instincts gradually go haywire, knowing that a predator is pursuing her is a difficult thing to override. Without making the conscious decision, she keeps peering back at the Terran to keep tabs, and she keeps catching herself from quickening her steps. All the while, other species watch on, murmuring and looking damn near panicked from witnessing a poor distressed Callie being accosted by a Deathworlder, all of which isn't lost on Simone. A filthy feeling grows in her chest, suddenly realizing this is probably going to happen very often. Shit. Maybe this really isn't such a good idea. She considers wishing the accursed stares would just stop. Is a job like this really worth having to deal with this bullshit? Of course, the lucky break is rife with the only thing that gets under her skin. There's always a goddamn catch. Her focus comes back, not seeing the Callie in front of her anymore. Shit! Before the adrenaline can kick in, a soft, four-clawed hand takes hold of hers. She looks down to her left, seeing Chuck, casually walking by her side. There we go. Much better, hope you don't mind, she chirps pleasantly, still looking forward. Not quite processing it, Simone silently abides, noticing the ongoing stares remain. However, now they are ones of confusion and, well, confusion. Even though the hand-holding was a bit much, this is indeed much better. The Terran looks down to this strange Callie. Despite weighing next to nothing to her, she alone just lifted a weight of Simone's soul that even the great Deathworlder struggled to bear. This Callie is definitely made from something else. Alright, maybe this gig won't be so bad. That line of thought takes a big back seat once Jack opens the dock doors. The ship is a beautiful make, much bigger than Simone would have ever guessed for a crew of two. Yet the stain of a dozen armed insectoid aliens waiting outside the ship's loading bay does lessen the impression a bit. Especially since two of the buggers are currently working away at the ship's door with plasma cutters. You didn't happen to hire a band of carve hijackers for your illustrious crew, did you? Simone asks. Of course not. Hey, that's my ship! The Callie starts marching forward, only to be stopped by Simone's hand. Relax, Bo Peep, consider this a proof of purchase. Simone steps around her to approach the ne'er-do-wells. My name is Chuck, and I would never buy a person, the Callie retorts in an insulted huff. Rolling her eyes, Simone stops 10 feet from the uninvited guests, all who stop and stare back blankly at the Terran. Hey guys, unfortunately for you, I'm in charge of the safety of this ship and the crew within, so I'm going to politely ask you to vacate. I know the ship is big and pretty, but is it worth fighting a scary Terran over? In disturbingly perfect unison, the troublesome dozen respond, yes. Well, shit. Other than the two working the doors, the rest bum-rush Simone, wielding repurposed security taser batons. Using the standardized lighter gravity, Simone leaps straight up like an actor on wires climbing atop the ship. The skittering attackers follow suit, but required to take separate longer paths up the ship. Chuck backs up against the wall to watch on, expecting the Terran to draw her sidearm and fire upon the exposed insectoids from the high ground. But to her unease, Simone just stands there waiting for them to get close. The first to get within arm's range is quickly dispatched, as Simone thrusts her fist through the bug's neck joint. A spurt of neon blue fluids fires from the now limp corpse. From behind, another gets close, yet doesn't expect the Terran to swing their brood brother's corpse up and over on top of them. Not killed by the blow, the last thing their blank optical organs see is a boot rocket down. The exoskeleton skull cracks inward like a hollowed-out watermelon, coating Simone's titanium-toed boot in fashionable blue. Two more on either side encroach at once, giving Simone pause. She readies her stance, bringing her fists up in a defensive position, while wetting her stance. Systematically, she aims her fists at joints and swiftly rotates her upper body fluidly to dodge impacts. Chuck can't look away. She couldn't understand why these Carve were so determined to take down a Deathworlder for a single ship. Granted, the ship is worth acute credit, but this is just insanity. The additional 4 lay gored and fractured around the Terran, leaving 4 more up here and 2 at the ship's door. However, only 3 come at the Terran with batons, while a cheeky little bitch stays back with a pulse rifle. Immediately, Simone practically dances herself to remain behind the melee fighters to obstruct a clear shot. She easily dispatches one after another, but reserves the third for a special fate. She grabs the wrist wielding the baton and twists off the entire grasper. Then, with a mighty headbutt, she stuns the combatant long enough to spin it around and grapple for a handy shield. "It's over. Drop the rifle and I'll let the rest of you off easy," Simone commands, as she slowly advances forward. The rifleman loudly garbles something in their native tongue. Simone halts, questioning what was said, waiting for her translator to kick in, but the Callie's screaming made the intent plainly clear. "Simone!" she cries out, backing away from the 2 charging Carve, who have turned their plasma cutters from the door to the lone alien lady. The rifleman takes the Terran by surprise as it fires at the already wounded shield, killing it instantly. Simone runs forward with the corpse shattering more and more as further concussive pulse shots collide. She throws what's left of the poor bastard down and whacks the pulse rifle barrel aside as it fires a final time. Pressing up, she takes hold of the rifle and yanks it free from the previous owner's grasp. Then, like a spear, she jams the weapon up through the cranium. Ripping it free, she takes aim and fires at the bug closest to Chuck. The rifle buzzes a negative response. "Oh, of course," Simone curses. Her hand brushes the holster pistol, but deciding against it, she instead runs down the side of the ship's hull. When reaching a 45-degree angle, she calls her legs and springs out to launch herself. Using her own body as a projectile, she slams into the back of the closest core, snapping their center joint upon impact. Rolling forward, she continues her momentum for another leap. With less gusto, she tackles the final bug. It squirms, and Wally swings the plasma torch in a manic attempt to fight back in vain. Their life is snuffed out, as Simone harshly twists the head to face a very incorrect direction. With a squelch, the final deceased Carve plops to the ground. The Terran leans back on her knees, catching her breath. Bathed in an ink blot of neon blue and chitin chunks, she looks over to Chuck. "Told you, made yourself a perfect target," she says, while trying to shake some of the gore from her arms. Precisely why we hired you, and it looks like you are exceptionally qualified," Chuck replies, avoiding her gaze but still finding bile threatening to erupt. "Happy to help. Hey, that fancy ship of yours wouldn't happen to have any bathing facilities, would it?" Of course it does. It's a converted luxury transport yacht. Don't get too excited, though. The spa was the few things not gutted." Chuck maneuvers around the bodies and splashes a gore to the cargo door. "Spa? Hell, I would have accepted a big tin water bucket." Simone stands and begins collecting the nearby batons. Ignoring the blatant death and carnage around her, Chuck secures a net connection to the ship's comms. "Captain, I've returned and have acquired the services of a Terran. She has already, dispatched the attackers outside the ship. Would you please open the cargo door?" About time. Another hour and they may have finally cut through the first compression seal. Ha!" a bubbling voice replies. The cargo door releases a breath and pops as it slides up. An accompanying ramp lowers itself. Standing at the top is a lumbering 10-foot blubbery figure. Adorned in a white and gold captain's uniform, the vaguely frog-faced reptile man stands at attention. Simone walks up next to Chuck, carrying a small bundle of batons, and the pulse rifle is slung over her shoulder. "Choknok, I presume?" she says as she saunters up the ramp. Aye, I'm afraid you have me at a disadvantage." "My people tend to do that." But in all seriousness, the name's Simone. She reaches out a tacky blue-tinted arm in greeting. Wordlessly, Chucknuck's whole head looks down at the hand, to the visible dead Carves, to Chuck, and finally back to Simone. Its vibrant red colour gradually shifts to a muted orange. Yes, welcome aboard. It pleases the Suns to see not only Miss Chocolata Mova's safe return, but her mission was successful. Simone, was it? Come. He turns and slithers, with his snake-like lower body, into the cargo bay. Simone wanders behind, giving the initial interior a good once-over. Plenty of storage space for transporting goods. Wonder if that's what they do. You will find the bathing facilities up on the second deck. There is a very clear sign. Go ahead and wash up while we get the ship up and moving," Chuck assures. Sure thing. With a thumbs up, Simone passes by and starts up the back stairs. Oh, one more thing, Chuck calls after her. The Terran stops and glances back over her shoulder. Thanks for saving me, again. I promise to make your employment here worth it, the Callie chirps softly. Simone smirks. You already have, Chuck. With that, the Terran leaves in pursuit of a good washdown. I can't believe you hired a Terran, Chuck utters, before making his way to the ship's bridge. Chuck follows in a huff. I'm telling you, a Terran is exactly who we need. Chuck exists. Out of all the Deathworlders to pick from, didn't your preliminary research determine that there was at least 5 different species better suited? He grumbles. Technically, yes, but they failed to meet my standards. Chuck sits down in the pilot's seat and begins launch procedures. Well, I trust you. If you're confident that this Terran is good enough to keep our hides unskinned, then I'll trust this Deathworlder to do their duty. Simone. Her name is Simone, Chuck reminds, as she crosses her arms behind her back. As you say, Your Majesty.